Good morning, Rabbi. Although it's not a really good morning, it's October 8th. But for the people in Israel, it's being compared to 9/11.
I think 9/11 doesn't do it justice because even though here in the United States things happened, an army didn't invade our country, an army didn't kidnap our people and take them to another country. So I think 9/11 sort of works, but it doesn't express the seriousness and the gravity of the situation.
Well, part of it is that everybody seemed to think that things were on a good track towards a peaceful resolution. And now, of course, it's like Chinese New Year, where they light that really giant roll of firecrackers. And it just goes on and on and on. And you keep wondering when's this explosion's going to stop? And at the end, what's going to happen?
And I think your description is really why it happened. It looked like things were settling down. It looked like there might be peace, uh, whatever that may take. And this didn't work for Iran. Iran wants instability in the Middle East. It's in their best interest to pit one country against another. And Hezbollah is supported by Iran. The Hamas is supported by Iran. They're Iranian weapons, they're Iranian trained. And so it was in Iran's best interest to stop the peace, particularly where Israel and Egypt were getting along so well and establishing a good peaceful relationship. That doesn't work for Iran. So Iran, using Hamas and Hezbollah as their agents, has introduced instability and created this nightmare of, like the firecrackers, one side pitted against another.
It's not like we have discussed in the past that neither side is blameless in this issue. But the point you and I agree upon is that violence is never the correct response.
And violence begets more violence. When we look at the history of humanity, and we find when any particular group resorted to terrorism and violence, the other side did more hurt and more, and it just exacerbates it. So there's nowhere in history that one can point and say, oh, violence solved the problem. It got peace for everybody, and our group now lives in peace with them. It never happened. It just begets more killing and more death and more violence.
How can anybody think that Hamas could possibly win anything in this situation?
Iran doesn't care if Hamas loses or how many people die. Their goal is to create instability in the Middle East, and that's what they've done. Israel was invaded, and they're going to defend, and then hundreds of Israelis have been kidnapped and taken to Gaza. What would the United States do if hundreds of our citizens were kidnapped and taken into Canada or Mexico by a faction? What would be the response?
And unfortunately, it is at a time when the Israeli government was debating peaceful solutions. There was no resolution, but there was an attempt to come to a resolution. And now, of course, all sides have tabled that issue.
Think about it, Joe. People who are hurt other people. And that's just an adage if we look at the history of mankind.
So, unfortunately, no matter what we hope or try for, this is only going to become very, very bad in so many ways. There will be pictures, there will be news stories, there will be interviews, there will be tragedies upon tragedies.
We have to stop taking sides and stop the finger pointing. It is a tragic situation. It is a train collision. I tell the story about two trains heading towards each other, and everyone's frantically trying to figure out how to stop the collision. And finally, the governor, the mayor, the CEO calls everybody in They look at the video and he says, I have some really bad news. The train is on an independent track heading south. There's another train heading on the same track north. There are no sidings. We are going to watch a train wreck. Tighten your seatbelts. We're going to watch a train wreck. So we don't want to think of the good. What we could, to keep us hopeful, is that we will look at this train wreck and say, we can't let this happen again. We can't let a third party come in and inflame everybody, infuriate people, make people take sides so that a lot of death takes place, a lot of hurt takes place. That's our hope. However, I think it's a mistake to think of good coming out. I think we're watching a train wreck.
Well, I know what I appreciate watching, and that's you in these times, Rabbi. Make a lot of jokes about how smart you are, how funny you are, and about how helpful your advice is. But that message of hope is something that I'm going to try and keep with me, and I hope everybody else does as well. Thank you as always.
Yes, our hope is seeing another train wreck will get us not to let it happen again.